Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thanks so much for joining today's webinar. My name is Allie Music, and I'm the Director of Member Services here at SIG. I have the pleasure of facilitating today's webinar entitled 5 Ways to Master Vendor Negotiation featuring Sleep Number. This webinar will also be presented by Scout. Today's webinar is meant to be interactive, so please submit your questions throughout the presentation by typing them into the Q&A box. We'll do our best to answer all of the questions at the conclusion of the presentation. Before I proceed, I have a few housekeeping and calendar items I'd like to review with you. Attend one of our signature events or share them with your colleagues. Next year, we'll have 4 signature events, 1 per quarter in different parts of the country. Please visit our website for a complete listing of also upcoming webinars and register today. Peer-to-peer is an opportunity to ask top-of-mind questions for instant responses. These questions go out twice a week, and you do not have to be a SIG member in order to respond. The SIG Resource Center has over 5,000 tools, templates, white papers, presentations, and research documents. We want to make your job easier. Let us know if you have any questions getting into the Resource Center, and we'll help you with your login. The SIG Career Network offers an opportunity to post both internships and jobs. So if you're looking for a job or looking to post a job, please reach out. Student Talent Outreach was designed to find tomorrow's supply chain professionals today while students are still learning about the industry in school. We're so excited to announce that we've established strategic partnerships with both Bureau, HFS Research, and Art of Procurement. Please reach out to a SIG team member if you'd like more information on any of these partnerships. SIG has also recently partnered with Munu Technologies for the upcoming Impact Sourcing Summit in Uganda. Please visit munutech.com for more information. SIG Global Executive Summits are semi-annual events with more than 350 decision makers in attendance. The agenda and event details for our upcoming Spring Summit in Amelia Island, Florida are available on our website, and registration is open. SIG University offers training and development opportunities to people of all levels of their sourcing careers. We're currently enrolling for the next semester, which will begin on January 21st. We'll be offering a 15% early enrollment discount to students who remit payment by December 21st. I am pleased to announce the 2 presenters that we have for today's webinar. We have CJ Anderson-Johnson from Sleep Number. She is the Indirect Sourcing Team Leader at Sleep Number. From working with senior leadership to expertly negotiating with vendors, CJ is at the forefront of sourcing initiatives. During her consulting tenure, she trained teams on supplier management and complex negotiations, and currently acts as a content contributor and sourcing technology innovator. On this webinar, we also have Michaela from Scout RFP. Michaela has experience working with both high-growth startups and large enterprises, including companies like Anaplan, Bill.com, and United Technology. She currently leads the demand generation teams at Scout RFP, fostering deep engagement with customers and helping enterprise sourcing and procurement teams make an impact. Michaela currently serves as the Executive Director on the Global Council for the Advancement of Women in Technology. Thank you both so much for participating in this webinar. Take it away.
All right. Greetings, everyone. I would also like to thank you for joining us today for the Saas negotiation webinar, as mentioned. My name is CJ Anderson-Johnson. I currently lead the indirect sourcing team here at Sleep Number, albeit a small one. My Sleep Number setting is a 35, which is a very soft mattress, and my Sleep IQ score, which measures how well I sleep at night, could use some improvement lately. So we'll just leave it at that and call it maybe me being really busy in December. I've been in sourcing for a really long time in various leadership and consulting roles. And somehow along the way, I've become specialized in technology sourcing, which is what my role was when I was a consultant prior to joining Sleep Number, and have continued to train and become what I would consider an expert to some degree in software and SaaS negotiations. Not because I'm magic, more because I've spent a lot of time training, reading, and negotiating hundreds of contracts. So I want to level set to some degree. We'll talk about the changing landscape of sourcing from when I first began and where we're at today. It is really different. And what that drives changes in needs for expertise, skill sets, and experience if you're going to be a sourcing resource these days. Negotiation, the magic question of when it is a good deal. Just want to touch on that briefly because it's something that I focus on with every negotiation that I do and keep in the back of mind and sometimes share with my cross-functional team that I'm negotiating with. Whose contract should you use? I think this could be a 2-day seminar in and of itself. I will keep this pretty high level and get through it as quickly as I can with the key message being it is not one contract and there is a whole lot of documentation you need to go through when you're doing one of these deals. Then SaaS negotiations itself, a few SaaS basics, and some 5 key negotiation elements. Hopefully you'll take a few nuggets out of that. And then again, just recap on the change in paradigm and where we're at. So in doing so, it's a good time for a poll question. I'd like to know what your level of expertise with SaaS or subscription service software vendor negotiations are. You should see a poll question come up on the right-hand side of your screen. I use this information to kind of gear my use or non-use of acronyms and how deep I go into some of the more technical things. Granted, the time's a little short, so I'll keep it a little higher level, but we'd like to know. Are you just getting started with SaaS negotiations? Have you done some, you're comfortable, but want to refine your approach? You're experts, and just looking for tips, efficiency, how to get through the negotiations faster. D, neutral. Just want to expand our skill set or see what we have to say today. And then E, we aren't negotiating with SaaS vendors at all yet. So it looks like the results aren't up there yet. As soon as I have those, I'll let you know.
CJ, what do you think what do you think is gonna come out? I think that we're gonna go with B. I think we're comfortable and want to refine our approach.
Sure, I'd say all over the board. All right. 35% we aren't negotiating at all, and 25% you're comfortable. Okay, and 19% neutral. Only 11% just getting started. Okay, so obviously there's some experience with folks on the phone. Great. Thank you. Good to know. Okay, the changing landscape. Just real quick, because I think it's relevant to where SaaS agreements fit in the overall sourcing picture. What we buy has changed. It used to be for indirect sourcing. Keep in mind, I'm excluding direct materials. That is not what I'm addressing here today. That's a whole nother topic. But what we used to buy and what we had sourcing managers and supplier managers for is copier and print services, office supplies, MRO, contingency labor, and basic services. When we talked about IT, it was more hardware, on-prem, legacy system software, and then some additional services. Nowadays, that landscape has become much more complex. If you think about what marketing was years ago, print, media, and agency services. For those of us who have been around long enough, the whole web platform acquisitions, that didn't exist. Now we have web platform acquisitions. We have all the data analytics providers behind those web platforms. We have influencers, and where do you collect that influencer data? Why, on other people's infrastructure, of course, which requires a Saas agreement. So where is your data? That's a favorite question of mine here at Sleep Number. It's everywhere. Literally almost every department in this organization is using more than one service provider that has our data of varying sensitivity out on their infrastructure, and we access that during a portal. If you think about human capital, marketing, even in sourcing, finance, everywhere, we all use providers that have our data on their infrastructure. The traditional mindset of costing is changing. It used to be save money, save money, save money. All your goals were all finance-based. Well, because of this changing landscape, risk has become a lot higher up on the topic and should be something that's addressed and something that is a focus from a goals perspective. We need to focus more on the overall deal and selecting the right service providers, selecting service providers that protect our data, and be able to put processes in place very early on to ensure not just the front-end procurement, but the long-term management of that is performed effectively. And then digitization, that's no news to any of you folks on the phone. You got to have tools to be able to do all this. They didn't exist. They're not the big behemoths of the world anymore. There are lots of different niche players. They're almost all cloud-based. So there's a lot of different opportunity to implement wherever you're at on that maturation stage for digitization. Okay, so when is it a good deal? This is something I talk about with folks all the time, and getting out of that cost save, hammer price that to me drives the wrong behavior. There is a total cost of ownership, and let's just call it price, where both parties land and we can both walk away happy. It fits our financials, it fits what we believe is fair from a marketplace perspective, and internally we have an ROI that works for that service. If you go below that level, and that to me is what cost savings, if that's the only thing you're focused on, you're going to incent your sourcing professional to land below that line, because that's when they are recognized for doing a good job. The salesperson may not be reaching their expected P&L goal. They may not be getting their desired commission. Hopefully, you don't land in a place where they're not even making money based on how they structure their financial situation on your account. Bad things happen. That's the rain cloud when you land below there. They will work very hard to get the revenue and the profit from your account back up to where they're happy with it. And it's not good for a long partnership perspective. On the flip side of that, you don't want money flying out the door on the top. So you want to make sure that you're not wasting money and paying more than you need to without getting an additional value. Why do you care? Well, at a very high level, if you have competitors that are down in that lime green bar and you're up in that top bar, over time, you're going to have a pricing problem on your hands because you aren't getting any additional value, you're not getting any additional services, and you are just plain wasting money. So from a Saas perspective, one of the things I coach very early on in the RFP and with my cross-functional team members, and use a version of this slide, is we want to land in the middle. And it also makes them feel more comfortable that as sourcing professionals and with software as a service specifically, we're not going to force them to just take the cheapest solution. We want the solution that works. So, key considerations for SaaS solution. Let's take a look at what they are and what's changed. Business units are driving the purchase now, not IT. There is a huge shift in paradigm that has happened over the last 5 to 10 years. 10 years ago, if you were talking any kind of software at all, any kind of integrations at all, those strategies and those acquisitions were driven, for the most part, out of IT. Now those acquisitions are being driven from the business units. Marketing comes to us when they need to go out for bid, when they have a data analytics provider that they need to bring on board. Human capital came to us when they needed a solution. It was a biggie, and it wasn't IT that was driving that. And you have to be aware of that and make sure that you bring IT in because they need to be part of the discussion real early on. But that's a big shift that I've seen. Also, SaaS fees are an expense. They are not capital, and they're not a depreciated asset. So 9 times out of 10, when I ask, well, who has the money and where is this going to hit in your budget, both that year and the following year, there is a lot of confusion and misunderstanding about how that hits the financials. So you need to make sure that your business unit and you are working with finance up front so that you have a really good understanding about what that financial picture looks like. Sorry, but the sales folks will tell you with SaaS that there's very little IT involvement, and you don't need to bring them in. Yes, you do. There's still data security, there's integrations. They need to make sure that there's a fit from an architecture perspective. So even though the sales folks might tell you there's very little IT involvement, I'm here to tell you there's very few contracts and very few SaaS providers where that's actually the case. Another sales pitch that you might hear is that you should go with SaaS and you should go with our solution because it's very flexible, and if you don't like us, you can just change in 2 years, in 3 years, in 5 years. That also is rarely the case. As we start to utilize more and more SaaS providers, more and more service providers that have our data outside in their firewalls, even though you can get it back, it's not in a usable format. And more those systems are integrating with each other and integrating with third-party software. And you spend anywhere from 3 months to 6 months to 18 months implementing these SaaS solutions, and you can't just walk away. So if you're hearing that, I would make sure that you check the boxes and you really understand the complexity of the solution that you're looking at and think of it more as a long-term investment, both financially and from a resource perspective. Okay, the contract. I also have spent a great deal of time explaining sometimes why it takes so long to get through contract negotiations for SaaS providers. Unfortunately, the vendor paper, their contracts that are presented to you are still very skewed from a risk perspective in their favor. So you're starting way down from getting to terms that your legal and your risk management and your finance folks are going to be okay with. So keep that in mind. If you have your own paper, which we do now, you want to try to use your own and get that starting bar closer to where you want to land. I know that isn't always feasible, but if you're thinking long-term strategy, get your own document in place, get it approved as a template, and all the associated documents so that you have something to start with, and at the very least have a guide when you're reviewing the vendor paper. They'll say that they're special that their terms are special and that you need to use their contract because it's very specific to their services that they provide. From a master SaaS agreement perspective, and I'll get to that in a minute, over in the upper right-hand side there, 80% of the terms, and I actually think this is higher, are actually the same as what's in yours. It's just whether or not they're drafted in your favor or their favor. The master terms are very similar. So that is not a reason to use their paper. You'll end up redlining 80% of that master agreement. And don't forget, you're the customer, it's your money, it's your risk. I understand that they're putting effort and resources towards the sale and obviously towards providing the services. But as you invest more and more money, it seems like I've had to remind them, hold on, guys. We're the customer, and if this whole thing fails, you can walk away. You might take a hit here and there from a revenue perspective and from a resource perspective that you invested in the sale. But if things go south, it is the customer that gets hurt real bad, a lot more than the provider. So when you're going through your contracts and going through those negotiations, don't lose sight of that. Okay, let's start with the master SaaS agreement with all those terms that legal likes to have their eyes on and should. That can be anywhere from probably average 12 to 20 page document. If it is a 2-page document, and look at how simple our master agreement is, there's going to be a whole lot of URLs in that short agreement where the pages actually point to. So short is not necessarily better. Attached to that master SaaS agreement is going to be an order form. There are terms and conditions in the order form. Ask for that early and make sure that the order form doesn't supersede what you just worked so hard to negotiate in the master agreement. There is a service level agreement or a service and support guide. Those also are attached or referenced as a URL, usually in the order form or the master SaaS agreement. You need to have IT take a look at that and your business units to make sure that they're okay with the service levels in that document. You can't change those service levels very often. We have, but one of the key takeaways in those is make sure that service level credits aren't your only recourse if they're failing to meet their service levels. There's a little gotcha sometimes in those SLAs that you want to make sure you don't sign up for. There's usually a data security guide that addresses all their obligations from a data security perspective. Got to have that review. Got to make sure that you're okay there. The cloud service privacy policy, it's usually a URL. Make sure that gets attached to your contract. They usually have a unilateral right to change those. Just make sure you're protected in your master that if something's really egregious, you can get out of the contract or at least get back to the negotiations. Documentation is, does the software work? Make sure that there's some kind of reference to documentation that everything works. All of that has to be reviewed. The third-party software and open source terms is another attachment. A lot of times there's a professional services agreement for implementation, for special configuration services, or for support that's outside their standard SLA. That can be a whole nother agreement and a whole nother negotiation. Attached to that is the statement of work with all of the detail for your implementation. Don't wait till the end and don't sign that master SaaS agreement and then do the professional services and agreement and the statement of work. That should all be done together up front. In an ideal world, send all of your professional service agreement, statement of work template, master SaaS agreement template with your RFP. And then finally, a change request form. Don't forget that. There's gotchas in that change request form occasionally as well. So as you can see, it's not one contract. There's a whole lot of documents that need to be reviewed by a whole lot of different teams within your organization. So plan for that from a negotiation strategy perspective and from a time perspective. Okay, don't forget to manage the future with Saas. Ensure that renewals and order forms are governed by the agreement that you just worked so hard to negotiate. Every once in a while, we get in a battle where an order form is subject to master terms in a URL and say that that agreement that we worked so hard to negotiate isn't in place anymore. Make sure you have terms that protect yourself from that. Price caps for renewals, you don't want to get to an end of a 3-year term and have that go up by 50%. Make sure that's protected. Pricing holds for additional licenses, have the right to true up or right size. That is very difficult to get. They're happy to sell you more, but to have that go down is pretty tough. But you can try it. And then flexible purchase quantities for future purchases, no huge minimums. Training for new users. As you bring people on board, there's turnover, and all of a sudden your training is really expensive. Address that. Increases in bandwidth, storage, and transactions. Ask for that, make sure it's in your order form, and then manage the term. A standard term is about 3 years. You better have really good warranties and things locked up for 5 years. If you go beyond that, you kind of send me back to my chair. But for 5 years, if there are a ton of integrations and it's a massive implementation, you can agree to that, but make sure that all of those items above that are in place so that you maintain some leverage. The SaaS implementation, ask that up front. Are they using a partner? Don't agree to work out the details of the implementation after the fact. All of the pain, it seems like with that still, as with traditional software, is in that implementation. Don't wait. Do that simultaneously. Keep in mind that a statement of work is a contract and not a project plan. I have had statements of work for SaaS implementations that had more obligations for Sleep Number than it did for the company that's doing the implementation. That's not okay. It's a contract. You need to have what are they doing, when are they doing it, deliverables, and how are they paying for it. It's not what is your company's responsibilities in order for them to do that. Put that in a project plan and keep it outside that contract as best you can. Hold on to your money. Hold on to SaaS fees and hold on to implementation fees as they meet milestones through that implementation. You give away a lot of leverage to get that up and running if you agree to pay both SaaS fees and implementation fees up front. Remember, if you can't use that software as a service for 9 months, don't agree to pay a standard SaaS fee for those 9 months. You don't get any use out of that software. The full SaaS fee should kick in after that 9 months. Address that in your RFP. And then make sure you have the resources and the rates, et cetera, in your statement of work, both for things that are expected and unexpected. So what to watch out for? Like I just mentioned, your SaaS fee payment schedule. Again, hold on to your money as long as you can. Suspension and termination rights. Make sure that you have a detailed process in your master agreement that allows you to pay late if you don't want to be a late payer on a regular basis, but if someone's on vacation, something happens and you don't get one of those payments made on time, that they can't terminate immediately or suspend immediately. Have a process in place for suspension and termination. Auto renewals for the same period as the initial term. Watch out for that. Auto renewals should be shorter. Keep all the caps in place, keep all your price protections in place, and keep those auto renewals for a shorter period of time, or don't have them at all. A pretty standard recommendation now is to not have auto renewals, and that you renew these SaaS agreements upon mutual agreement of the parties when you have all your protections in place. Don't give away your publicity and your logo. That's an asset to your company, so make sure that you get something for that if you allow them to use your publicity, your logo, and you as a customer. And be careful providing references, and do that with your permission and at your sole discretion. You can get into a real tough situation. This applies to everything. But it seems like I see it in much more detail in the SaaS providers, probably because they're such new companies as a general rule, that they have some pretty stringent obligations on the customer for providing references and for even doing POCs and things like that. And then watch out for prevailing rates to get your data. Remember, your data is not in your house, it's in theirs. And plan for that up front. Maybe get it ahead of time, get it pre-termination, have a right post-termination for a limited amount of time, and ideally, maybe periodically. All right. So what's the role of technology in this changing platform, and how do you manage the complexity of all of those documents? How do you manage the complexity of just the skill set that's required to review all that and to negotiate that? It has changed significantly. So you do need processes documented, you need templates documented, and you need technology to improve the speed of execution. We do so many that it is just hard to keep up with. So you gotta have some tools in your back pocket to be able to do that and even keep up with the standard volume. Our roles are transitioning from sourcing manager to sourcing advisors. You have to have a deep expertise in the legal terms, in the software that they're buying, and the functional requirements. You always rely on your business units and IT for that, but you need to be able to put that together in statements of work and in contracts that make sense. So there's a transition from just a tactical RFP manager to becoming an advisor with data security and some of the issues that are coming up with these SaaS solutions. So you got to hire for the right skill set for that and have the right training. And then transitioning the internal customer to sourcing agents for the more transactional-based processes. This is definitely something that we've implemented Scout for, and that we're going to continue to push into 2019 and 2020. So we can focus on the more complex things and the more complex SaaS type situations, and have our business unit reps be able to do more of the transactional stuff and have control of that and be able to get it done faster. And invest in the resources to become embedded in the business units. So you know what their strategies are, you know what they're going to be looking for service providers and SaaS providers, and to be able to manage that. You can't just sit behind a desk and not understand the web platform and how the data analytics works before that, and then try to manage an RFP for that. It just has become far more complex to be able to do that on one-off situations. So with that, I know that was a quick blast through that. In each one of those slides, if there's more information or you'd be interested in a deep dive into some of that, please let us know.
Thanks, CJ. As you shared, it's much easier to set yourself up for success if you simplify. And as many of you know, the mantra from Marie Kondo, declutter your home, declutter your life, declutter your mind. Her KonMari method is to live only with belongings that spark joy. Scout's platform focuses on very similar principles. Simplify, 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 making things more efficient. At Scout, our goal is to be the single source of sourcing truth. We are continually working with customers, sourcing leaders, and analysts to better understand needs, processes, and challenges. So recently we connected with our sourcing leaders and contract managers to better understand their challenges in contract management. We recently learned quite a bit, which is why I wanted to share this particular poll with you today with the SIG community to see how you would map to the others we've been collaborating with. So our second poll question is, what's your level of satisfaction with contract management for your organization? A, very dissatisfied, B, satisfied, C, neutral, D, satisfied, and B or E, very satisfied. So you'll see in the polling questions off in the right-hand panel, if you just pick one, that would be great. And then CJ, where do you think the SIG community will land on this?
I think it depends on if you're a financial institution or an insurance agency or insurance company or a highly regulated company that implemented a behemoth and are working their way through that, you're going to be dissatisfied. And if you have nothing, you have dissatisfied. So I would say whatever is going to skew it towards needing some pretty simple, better contract management.
Yeah. I know as I shared, we've done a similar poll, and most people said that what they really needed were a simple, flexible way to manage contracts, something that would provide visibility to their stakeholders, a way to share a full view of the supplier relationship, and really tackle the tough challenges of obligation management. And it looks like, for the most part, we're either on the biggest number is neutral or dissatisfied. And so that is very interesting. As I had shared, it comes close to what our poll had shown. Only 30% of CPOs are satisfied with their CLM system. And what's interesting is that this aligns with Gartner. Gartner just released a research paper, their annual Predicts paper. And basically what they're saying is, as buying organizations mature in their digital transformations, they will need deeper support in the areas of contract lifecycle management. And companies are funding these initiatives as their top priority this year. And why? Mainly because innovation leads to growth, growth leads to advantage, and advantage leads to competitive differentiation. Companies in the past used to stay on the Fortune list for 75 plus years, and now they're seeing a lifespan of about 11. And a lot of that is due to, really needing to transform. Transformation is very difficult for organizations. But honestly, what makes any innovation really stick is whether or not your customers use it, if they share it, and if they love it. And Scout's simple and effective solution automates processes which lead to accelerated decisions that ultimately drive business impact. And that's our goal, to be the single source of sourcing truth. And with that, I'm really, really honored to share that we've been recognized as the 2018 Gartner Peer Insight Customer Choice for Strategic Sourcing. And it's a real uncommon honor. It's the truest, highest accolade that any company could get. And, Scout is just so happy. We hear all the time from our customers directly in a public forum that they truly appreciate our focus on their success. And our goal is to make every customer crazy successful, because by staying focused on your success, we can truly help you succeed in doing business. If Gartner's 2019 prediction research of deeper support in the areas of contract lifecycle management is needed, Scout's new contract tool, Scout, may just be the simplest and most effective way for enterprises to get there. Scout's contract is the first contract management tool that provides both simple and flexible contract management. and makes the process of identifying, tracking, and managing obligations not only clear but straightforward. With Scout Contracts, teams can implement effective data-driven contract management processes in a matter of hours. Scout Contracts allow companies to manage obligations, effortlessly track contract status, set renewal notifications, request e-signatures through DocuSign. And how do we do it? We work really closely with contract teams. What we did was we sat with them to understand the complexities, the challenges, and we dug into their processes and identified what really mattered to them. We stripped out everything that we thought was important and they didn't, and focused on what was important. Because our mantra, as I said, is to be the single source of sourcing truth. And so we launched this easy-to-use contract solution, I think about a month ago. And honestly, it's what makes Scout one of the top-rated customer sourcing platforms at Gartner. So let me just give you a little quick background on the platform itself. Many of you at SIG are aware of Scout. We've been at the SIG events for the last few years, and our name is Scout RFP. So most people know us as an RFP tool, but our platform does so much more than that. We do contracts, supplier performance management, auctions, managing projects, and supplier report cards. And how do we do it? We deliver a platform and services that help the enterprise accelerate savings and projects as well to reduce supply-based risk. Scout is the first to enable effective obligation management for sourcing teams. And as you can tell, I'm super excited about contracts because our goal is to make the process not just simple and effective, but to seamlessly integrate it to the entire supplier engagement process, from vetting to signature, renewal, and beyond. And I understand, being in marketing, and especially at a small company, we don't have the luxury of having an awesome procurement team. So I understand the pains of some of those contracts because I go through contracting sometimes, and I wish I had you guys on my side. Scout Contracts is the first CLM to actually enable effective obligations management. And it's the #1 request that we receive from customers and prospects alike. It's a huge unmet need in the market. Now teams have the ability to easily track, surface, and report on critical contract obligations from multiple parties, right in one contract record. Not only does Scout give you a simple, flexible way to track these, they're fully reportable in our Scout reports. They can be mapped effortlessly to your supplier engagement and supplier performance management processes. And sometimes I hear when I'm at conferences, the business has no visibility into contracts or renewals. It's virtually impossible to share documents. And as you can see on the slide, 53% of people are managing more than supplier. 82% are currently managing more than 5,000 contracts, and only 30% of CPOs are satisfied. What to do in a modern organization, or really better put, in today's hyper-fast economy, legacy and manual tools, or a combination of them, honestly don't cut it anymore. What all of us need are real-time access to information and context. By relying on figuring out the right search term to find out what you're looking for is a bit frustrating and not good enough. What is needed? Clear visual representation of contact hierarchies, better tools for finding, not just searching for key documents, and overlaid onto the process of getting contracts signed. Scout Contracts is simple, it's flexible, it's like the rest of Scout, it's easy to use. It's accessible to the entire business. It provides a clear, effortless, real-time view into every statement of work and contract obligation. It can be used on the mobile phone. It can be used on your laptop. It can be used on a desktop. It's always available. And with that, I wanted to move on to questions. I know we don't have much time left, and I know we've got a few questions. So, Allie, take it away.
Hello. Thank you both so much. We do have a few questions. For those who have not submitted yet, please go ahead and type them in the Q&A box. We'll do our best to get to them, and if for some reason we're unable to, the presenters will reach out to you after the fact. So for the first question is this. For the SOW, do you have any advice on how to write performance standards for agile projects?
performance standards, I'm going to assume during implementation for the statement of work, if you mean deliverables. I usually work with the business units and write very detailed deliverables that are associated with key milestones that are specific to different phases in the implementation, and then associate payment with those. So it would be if you have different modules and different sub-functions being brought up within that module, each time that module goes live, that should be a date and a deliverable. And within that module, it should function in a certain way. So the deliverable is it's up and usable, and you can use that software A, B, C, and D. I usually bullet point it behind that. Very detailed. That part of the statement of work should be the largest section, is the deliverables and what the milestones associated with those deliverables need to be, with dates associated with them and descriptions and what's happening and what's a successful, yes, it works, and what isn't.
That's great. Thank you so much. We have another question. Again, folks, keep on submitting your questions. We will definitely make sure to get to them either live or after the fact. So for the next question, how can we hold them accountable when the deliverables are MVPs within a series of sprints?
Well, again, I think that goes back to holding on to your money as long as you can, and it depends on the accountability, and you want to make sure that if you do have some accountability in the project plan, that you're managing those. And we recommend having a contract manager and a project manager being two different resources during that implementation. So the project manager manages the way you would think of as a traditional PMO and an IT PMO. The contract manager manages the vendor in meeting the deliverables, meeting the timelines, and making sure you're on track. So holding them accountable is a process throughout the entire thing. It's too much usually for the project manager who's focused on different things. They're focused on getting it up and running in general, but they're not focused on this task was supposed to take 20 hours and we're now at 65. What's the issue? That's the contract manager and the contract management role as part of that statement of work. And also have holdbacks if you can get it in. If they're late, they get paid 50%, and they get the next 20% if they get it done within the next 5 days. And I'm making the time frames up, or the next 2 weeks, so that they're incented to get it done, or you're holding their money back.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I would like to, Allie, I'd like to jump in on that as well. One of the things I would suggest, because honestly, as a company that creates SaaS software and a person who's worked at multiple SaaS companies, we want your customer to be successful. So I think working in conversations on a regular basis with either the success team at the company that you're working with that are outside the deliverable company. Meaning it could be the same organization. The company that you bought the software from may be the organization that's doing the implementation, and that's great. But set aside on regular conversations, whether it's going well or not, just a check-in. It's always great to be more engaged. It can never hurt, and you can always cancel those meetings if everything's going swimmingly.
Thank you both. Next question here. As we approach 2019, what hurdles do you anticipate going into next year?
Just in general, I would say for us, and what I hear from colleagues is just the sheer increase in volume and making sure that you have repeatable vetting processes both around the company and obviously their financial well-being, and that they're a good fit, which is a separate vetting process, the data security vetting process, and then the right resources to be able to just manage the sheer volume of these types of acquisitions and service providers that we're bringing on board, and managing that risk and being able to do it quickly. You know, you don't want to have a business unit come to you and say, yeah, I can get that done in 9 months. Life is moving too fast for that. Innovative companies are moving too fast for that. So I would say one of our biggest challenges, and one of the biggest challenges I hear across the board, is being able to meet the ever-increasing complexity and demand from a volume perspective with both the tools and the resources that you need.
Thank you so much. Again, folks, keep on submitting these questions to us. Next, let's see what one will be the next relevant one. When selecting technology, what attributes were most important to you for success?
Well, I would say the attributes are, there's probably a few. From a culture perspective, are they with your organization at a high level, whether they're a technology or any other company? That still applies. From an infrastructure perspective, if it is a SaaS provider that needs to integrate with your legacy systems, how difficult is that integration, or how easy is it? That is something that is evaluated much more deeply than it was before. How willing are they to accept the responsibility and the risk when your data is in their house and their firewalls and they're managing that? It's a different risk profile than software that's in your house with inside your firewalls, where you have a lot more control. So a lot of the discussions and a lot of the pain points that you have started to hear is trying to allocate fair, and I'm air quoting fair, that risk, and trying to understand that much, much sooner in the vetting process. And if we're way off, you go to a plan B, or they're not under consideration. And then the functional requirements, obviously, that it has to work.
Thank you. Next question. What's the key to securing executive support for transforming processes and tools?
Visibility to the pain points and how that technology and tools will address those pain points, and in almost any organization, how that will translate into revenue. You want to solve risk issues, you want to solve data security issues. A lot of times there's not an ROI with that, but if there is technology that does provide an ROI that translates all the way back to revenue, those get attention sooner than trying to solve risk and pain points. Data security and meeting regulations excluded. Those always get attention as well.
We have a new question, very hot topic here. What difficulties do you see with the new tariffs coming in place next year? I warned you.
That's a big one. Let's see. You're gonna get out of my wheelhouse a little bit, but if you're trying to move suppliers change suppliers into countries where you can avoid the increases in those taxes and tariffs, and adding complexity into the supply chain instead of not, there's a whole lot of effort and a whole lot of discussion in what to do to avoid the increase in cost with those tariffs. And from what I hear so far, it's creating some very urgent changes down the supply chain that need to be addressed. Mm-hmm. Unless things change, which they might.
Yeah. We got 5 more minutes and a few more questions. Folks, please keep submitting them. We'll make sure to get to them either now or afterwards. So next question, effective change isn't turnkey. So what advice can you offer to make significant progress?
That's interesting. That's an interesting question, and no change isn't turnkey. And I would suggest if you're implementing, trying to figure out, okay, it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity to change process, to implement technology. And let's just stick to sourcing. For sourcing in particular, I wouldn't look at it as a big blast of change. I would try to figure out what smaller steps you can take to make the most impact, to address the most immediate changes, like the complexity in what we're buying and the risk. I would bubble those things up to the top, and other things that are much more difficult to implement, tougher to get the ROI, put those to the bottom, and then plan well for that change and do it methodically and thoughtfully, like you would with anything else. Open communication, I think Michaela would agree with me. Get in front of all your business units and show them what you're doing and how it will benefit them. From a scout perspective, I'll say we use the intake process now with them and the pipeline, and our stakeholders have much more visibility into the milestones that we're working on, and that was part of our selling point in our convincing them to change and convincing our legal department to change is the visibility and how much it'll make their lives easier. So that's a good approach as well if you're running into some roadblocks.
I'd like to jump in on this too, Allie, really quickly. I've been reading a couple books lately on transformation and really trying to get underneath what is holding different areas of the business back. And honestly, what it gets down to is that we as humans don't really want to change. And it's not because we're negative. It is not because change is difficult. It's that we worry that the change will not bring us a better solution, and we want to defend our company and do the right thing for them. And it kind of ties into what CJ was saying about making sure you have the contracts locked in, making sure that the success is on the side for your organization and not the company that's selling you the software. And some of the things I've seen some Scout customers do, which has been really interesting, is that they hold different types of educational sessions for stakeholders. So VSP has gone through a whole process of really educating how to use sourcing and procurement. But I have seen Zappos do vendor days. I've seen LendingTree do vendor days. Even our customer in Australia, Unity Water, did a whole training session for the entire company. So this is hundreds of stakeholders that are really trying to understand what you're doing, and it will help you, as I'm sure you know, right? And it's like, how do you get them on board? But it's a really great process to get people just understanding what you're trying to do, and as CJ said, little by little, taking those little pieces and moving everyone along, and then the change becomes natural if it's transparent.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to wrap this up with one more quick question, and then we will have to close out this webinar. So the quick question here, With so much constant activity for the sourcing team, how do you identify potential bottlenecks in the pipeline? We're down to 1 minute, so the timer's on.
Well, that's tough to do. It depends on whether you're tracking your projects via an Excel spreadsheet. If you've got a solution that you use, there's a whole lot of steps, and I think that there's an expanded cross-functional team specifically for Saas that has to be involved in the acquisition process. So really having maybe postmortems after each one and figuring out and talking about where there were delays, where there's improvements for efficiency, what you can do better next time, and being very thoughtful and purposeful in how you've looked at the past and then implementing that for the future. Because the bottlenecks can be all over the place. That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, this will conclude today's webinar. Thank you both so much for sharing your insight with us. We look forward to connecting with you soon. We are now pushing out the slides, so to download that, just click on the PDF and you can follow the information to download the presentation. If there's anything else that either presenters or SIG can assist you with, please reach out to us, and I hope everyone has a great rest of today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
CJ, I wanted to thank you so much for your presentation today and sharing how great Scout's been for Sleep Number, and I also want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. I hope you enjoyed the session and have a wonderful day.
You bet.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Bye-bye.